know me. So D'Angelo, Practice Biopsy. We've got Phil here. So Phil's going to be our moderator for our discussion. Okay, so Phil is the host of the podcast called the Mentors of Dentistry. So he's got some experience doing the interviews and kind of just keeping everything flowing. So a lot of people have submitted questions that they want to hear about from each of us. But basically, it's going to be like a informal discussion. Like we're all just going to chat about it. So in our group, we're all in our first year of ownership. 2 people did a startup. I did a startup. Sarah did a startup. 2 people did an acquisition. That would be Lance and Sohrab. So Phil, why don't you guys start it off?
Yeah, man. Give me one sec. All right. Yeah. So thank you for the invitation. I'm the least qualified to be here today, so that's why I'm the moderator. So I just want to kind of get to the nitty gritty of the why. Let's start. We'll start with the why for each of one of you. Why you purchased or startup, did a startup practice, and then we'll kind of work into the how that was accomplished and all the fun stuff after that. So D'Angelo, you put this thing together, man. Let's start with you. What was your why?
Sure. So basically, my why, I knew I wanted to be some sort of business owner before I even knew I wanted to be a dentist. So it was just kind of a natural thing for me. I knew I was never going to be totally happy being an associate, being an employee doctor, to the point where I would have preferred to make less money as an owner than make more money as an associate. I was pretty set on that. And I knew that early on. I mean, I started my process of acquiring / building my startup when I was still in dental school. So I was pre-approved for my loan for my startup when I was still a dental student, 4th year. And then I just kind of carried that progress along until I opened my doors, which took about a year. So even though I was approved for my startup loan before I graduated, it took me about a year to actually get the doors open on the startup. But I've been open for about 8 months now, and things have gone really, really, really awesome. I was able to pay myself, like take a paycheck from my startup right away, which not everybody can do, but I feel really fortunate that I was able to. Probably by the 2nd month, I was already able to take home more money after all my expenses and paying back the loan and everything. More money from my startup than I was making full-time in my associate job. So I can't say that I made the wrong choice.
Sure. Saurabh, how about you, man?
Why? I think the why is really important, extremely important. I think everybody should go really dig into your why. And for me, it was I wanted financial freedom. I mean, it was most people, they're afraid of that word, or it's a scary word for them when you say financial freedom or when you talk about the money. But for me, it was I don't like the 8 to 5 jobs. I was looking at the financial freedom. So basically, I went back and I was keep on asking, okay, how do I get there? Ownership is definitely one of them. I mean, if you want to make it's not always about the money, but I think money gives me the financial freedom to do the things that I'm really passionate and really want to do. So it was definitely, I mean, financially, it was a big motivator and in a way, and also I'm a control freak. So, I really wanted to control things and to be financially free, you need control and leverage. So if you're an associate, you don't have this, the control, and you cannot leverage anything. So that was my main. That's how I decided to purchasing was the way to go. I needed that monthly cash flow to take me to give me the options, basically, to do other things.
Gotcha. Lance, how about you, brother?
So I went to dental school with D'Angelo, and he's about the only other person I could talk to about business stuff and not kind of get shunned. I guess it wasn't just a very popular thing to talk about. Nobody really likes to talk about the business aspect or the money, or not many people that I was with. So I watched him go through the startup process. For me, I just felt like there were so many unknowns to the startup process. and I was feeling like I wanted a little bit more, just things already set up. So I started to look for a practice to acquire. I was looking in dental school. Had a couple that I was looking at, and I had a nice lawyer talk me out of it.
A great lawyer.
A great lawyer. Yeah, he saved me big time. And then I went and practiced for about 6 months. And while I was practicing, I was an associate with like a 20% take home on everything I did, plus an hourly rate, and it kind of galled me that for every dollar I made, the company was making $1. And so I began to look like really, really seriously to offboard out of there, and wanted to get back home to Colorado. So I found a nice rural practice, and that was kind of distressed, and bought that, and things are going good.
So
nice.
You acquired kind of a distressed practice, you said, and then Sohrab, I think you acquired a practice that was already doing pretty well. Is that accurate, you think?
Yes. Yeah. My practice was producing about $660 a year when I took over.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a quick adjustment. It seems like it's starting to rain, so I'm at the park.
I'm gonna amend my statement. I say distressed. Distressed is in the doctor owner was having health issues and hadn't been practicing for like the last 3 months, and so there had been like 4 other dentists who were filling in for him during that time, and but financially not distressed. I mean, his past 3 years he had produced about 850,000,
which is great.
Which is
yeah,
great.
good.
And I got a good price.
Hey, CR, how about you, man? Give us your why.
Well, as you know, I did a startup, and we actually opened 5 months ago. And it's I took an unconventional path to it. I think there were a lot of whys. One of them was I was really sick and tired of commuting. I was driving everywhere. Originally, I started practicing. I graduated from University of Pennsylvania, and we had a really rough winter in Philadelphia. And I was like, I'm going to go to Florida, and I'm going to start practicing there. And fortunately, I did find a great practice where I could hone my skills and really got to do everything in general dentistry. I was able to do a lot of different procedures, learn from a good mentor. I wasn't getting paid, but I learned a lot. And basically started looking, even when I was in Florida, but my family was still in Delaware, so I ended up coming to Delaware, and Delaware has very strict laws when it comes to licensure. So I was living in Delaware and practicing in Maryland. So I was driving, I think in 1 year I drove maybe 50,000 miles, and it was just for work, and it was just getting tiring, and it was getting dangerous, really. And so when I got my license in Delaware, I decided that it was time. And so I was fortunate. I had my brother graduate from business school, and so we decided to start looking. We couldn't really find a practice that was an existing practice that met our requirement, and we will probably go into that a little later. But we started a startup, and we couldn't be happier.
Nice.
We would have done something differently, but if I were to do it again, I would do some things differently, and hopefully other people can learn from our mistakes and not repeat them. But at the end of the day, I am so much happier to be in charge and to be in control of my destiny. And I wanted to be a dentist in freshman year of high school. I knew I wanted to be a dentist, but I never imagined myself working for somebody else. I always imagined myself being in charge of my own career, my own destiny. And so that's where I am.
Nice. Well, guys, let's jump right into it. Some of the nitty gritty. I'm going to start off in location and demographics. Kind of just give us the broad general numbers, the population to dentist ratios. Kind of describe your patient base. You're near a military base. Is it, big city, small city, medium city, all that kind of stuff. And it's obviously going to be different for y'all who bought. You didn't have control over that. But for the startup, y'all can kind of go. I know, D'Angelo, you've talked about it before. So.
Right, sure. For me, dentist to population ratio was, of course, very, very important. When I was looking at those numbers, I wanted something that was at least 1 to 5,000. And what I ended up getting was about 1 to 6,500. But because I also did a competitive analysis, which is where you go and actually see who these dentists are that are around, I realized that, okay, right now it's like 1 to 6,500. But, 2 of these dentists are getting ready to retire. So when they retire, it's going to be even better. So after they were gone, that true number ended up being, actually much better than the 1 to 65, maybe 1 to like 7,500. That was pretty much my number there. As far as what the rest of the demographic is like, it's really working class, blue collar, bread and butter dentistry. I do a lot of extractions. I do RPDs, removable, restorations, crown. I don't have much of a market for more complex dentistry where I'm at, but that's kind of by design, because I'm like, okay, I'm getting into this startup thing while I'm still a dental student. My skills are not crazy advanced. I need to do stuff that's basic, stuff that I learned in school, stuff that I know I can do, stuff I know I can get done. So I went to a market where it's regular working families, and if they show up and you can pull their tooth and you can fix up their cavities, everyone's going to be happy. So all I do is bread and butter dentistry, and that's kind of my market. I know Saurabh, his audience is his patient base is a little different than mine. It's a little bit more high end. So why don't you tell us about that?
It's a little fancy.
It's a little fancier.
Yeah, I just got lucky with.
Well, Lance just bought it. I think Lance is in the process of buying a cone beam, so he's kind of fancy too. And Sayar's already got one. Nice. I think.
Well, in acquisition, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think demographics matters much. It's mostly just financial history of the practice and the cash flow. I mean, that's all you gotta be. Oh, the one thing I would say, location is probably visibility from the road. You want to be as visible as possible. But other than that, I mean, nowadays you also have to consider online visibility, because most older practices you buy, they don't have online visibility. The practice I buy didn't even have a website, and we still don't have a website. I'm almost a year into it. But anyway, that's a different story. So going back, demographic. I would say probably, it don't matter as much. It just, you have to look into financial of the practice and see if it makes sense financially. That's it always goes back to the numbers, and if numbers and if you location the building needs to have visibility, it's so important. And yeah.
So what are the most important numbers you look at when you're doing an acquisition? Like when you looked at all the things you might acquire, what were the numbers you looked at to say, hey, this is going to be a good acquisition?
For me, it was again, you got to go back to there's multiple things you got to look into when you're, but financial is one number. It needs to cash flow. Most dental practice, I looked over probably 150 dental practices. I mean, I was analyzing, and most of them it didn't make sense financially. And the ones that did, and it didn't pass through other criteria like practice analysis, the procedures that are being done in that practice, the goodwill. The building and the lease, there's some problems with that, so financial is definitely one of them. And so usually what I did was I got two information from the agent, and one was P&L, and try to get also procedural report. And based on those two information, it was either it was a yes or no. If financially it made sense and those were the procedures that I could do, then I would dig more into the practice. If those if say the practices was doing 40% implants and I don't place implants, I didn't even bother trying to pursue that practice anymore. So I kind of stopped, and that's how my flow kind of worked. Basically, I went back. I was even evaluating practices from other states. It was just like it's like a muscle. You gotta get used to it. You gotta practice. So when that practice presents itself, you know what you're looking for. So it's there was many practices that were the same area that I really wanted to practice, but it was not the right practice.
Did you use a broker for this?
Yes, but brokers, and yeah, it's just. I mean, they tried to sell you a practice.
Okay, good. All right, we're back. We're good. We're recording. I'll edit out all the weird stuff. So anyway, Rob, when I got cut off, you were talking about brokers.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Brokers. Again, they're there to it's a source of lead, and I would not I respect what they do. I like what they do, but I don't trust them in a way what they say. So you always have to be cautious of what they say. Their job is to unload the practice, just like a real estate agent. But I would run your own numbers, and even CPA. I mean CPA. I had CPA run numbers, and they all they want is trying to. What I found, I shouldn't say all, the ones that I had experience is they just want to get your business in the future, and I didn't feel like they added a lot. Yeah, but first you gotta go back and truly know what you really want out of the practice, or what kind of practice you want to buy. All practices is not right, either financially or procedure reports, the procedures that are being done, or even the goodwill. I got actually two practices. I ended up not buying. It was because of goodwill issues. Well, it was a beautiful practice. It was okay. It was not beautiful. It was a dump. But financially, it was beautiful. It was a cash cow. Like it was producing so much money. It was running at 35 to 38% overhead, and it was a 3-op. I don't like to buy a 3-op, but I was really considering it. So we went through the whole thing. We were about to close the practice, and something didn't feel right. One of those things. I just didn't feel right. There was a. I'm gonna make this story very short, but the husband was. The wife was the dentist, but the husband was always on the phone in a way that was like, I didn't know he was on the phone, but he would just sneak up in the middle of our conversation and just, I was like, dude, have you been hearing us? Well, that made me, I was like, I need to look into this. So Google search on the wife and the husband, I realized the husband was a pharmacist. His license was revoked in a couple of years back for selling I think it was like 1,100 or 1,200 Vicodins or something like that. So right away. Yeah, it was right away. I was like, okay, this guy is involved in this practice. I need to be very cautious going into this. And then when I did my due diligence on site, I was more thorough, and I realized there was procedures notes were not being completed. There was a lot of other issues, and then we ended up parting away.
A lot of stuff that you'd have to clean up.
It was patients were there. I mean, but you don't know what else is going on. Like in that practice, they could be billing for things that they were not supposed to. Once you take over, you can have all the law, protecting you, but on the purchase agreement. But still, I don't feel good taking over of that kind of practice. So you always have to look into that aspect as well. What kind of dentist you're buying from. So I think I kind of went off track a little bit.
No, man, that's good.
No, it's cool.
Good stuff.
And I want
Perhaps,
to
but
change.
actually, you discussed a very important point earlier, which was if I'm going to acquire a practice and they perform procedures that you are not going to be able to perform, you have to be very careful with that. At some point, my friend and I were actually looking into buying existing practices, and we stumbled upon a practice that was $5 million, and we were going to actually buy it. But then we looked deeper into the procedures that we had to perform, and being straight out of school, maybe a year, 2 years, or a year and a half out of school, it just didn't make sense. It was too much of a burden on us. So the due diligence is very important. You know, you're looking at the numbers, but you have to look at procedures. What are they doing? What can you do? And what procedures they are not performing that you could bring in and actually improve the practice. So it's a lot of variables that you've got to look into. And I thought that was very important that you brought that up.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that too, from my own experience. One about the financials. You know, what's on the P&L is all well and good, but it's through their computer program. It's through their EagleSoft or their Dentrix or whatever, and that can be misleading. And so I would also say make sure you get their tax
returns
documents.
Yeah.
Make sure that their take home is actually what their tax return
I might
says
even want to see bank statements, like, you know.
Agreed. And
because when you apply, when you apply for loans, like the bank asks you for tax returns, the bank asks you for your previous bank statements and proof of this and that. I think you should ask for the same thing from these sellers, like tax returns,
Yes.
bank statements. You need to verify it because in their practice software, that can be fudged.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Totally
here's
agree.
yeah. You can do all of that in doing due diligence, but I would just put a word of caution is that you don't want to ask for too much information where by the time they get it to you, the practice will be already gone. The practice I came across, like literally it was probably 24 hours before it was already sold in a way. It had 4 full price offers on it, and so you just like you gotta be
So this is something I learned in buying a house and the practice is you can always put money down towards it and back out. Like there's always, and especially if they're working with a broker, you can say, yeah, I'd like to put down my $3,000 charge towards holding this practice, basically. I mean, that's basically what it is till you get your due diligence done.
Yeah, contingent on due diligence, right?
Exactly. And then the other thing that I wanted to put forward was, yes, look at procedure mix. Look at what you're doing already, look at what you're capable of doing and what you're not. When I came to this practice, the report from the brokerage showed fewer ortho cases than we were actually doing. So I was like, well, maybe he can finish them up and then I can just come in and do what I know how to do. But the reality is we started so many cases and it's such a large part of our procedure mix. And, you know, it's a small town. I hate to lose families over not being able to provide ortho for their kids. So all of those things kind of factored in, and now here I am after an 8-hour ortho class doing a.
You're gonna finish up. But Lance,
video.
for you, the selling doc stayed on for you, right, Lance? Like he's still there.
Yeah, he's staying on till February.
How long will that be?
We're still starting new cases. Like every week, we're starting new cases.
So is he staying on 6 months for you?
It will have been a full year.
Full year, and then Saurabh, your guy was gone immediately, right? And you wanted him gone, right?
Yeah. I lost. Well, he wanted to be out, and I lost 3 key staff members in the first couple of months.
Let's talk about like the consistency of like keeping staff in an acquisition. Like Lance, I think you pretty much kept everybody. Saurabh, I don't think you kept everybody. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And is it good or bad? Like, what are the good things and bad things about the way it went?
Okay, I would say it went great. I loved it. Okay, first when I bought this practice, I knew it was overstaffed, overstaffed or underproduced. So the staff overhead was high. It was upwards of 35%. Most people, well, because it was all the other criteria that I was looking for, it matched perfect. You know, it was one step. I was like, hey, 35, I'm gonna hang on there as long as I can. I'm gonna keep everybody. You know, I will just take less money. So you know, take home, and that was my my goal going in. And eventually, well, I will increase my production and it will normalize back. But it didn't go as planned. So as soon as I got there, first or second day, my front desk, she was just being really negative towards this transaction, and so I had to let her go on a second day. Basically, so I'm sorry, you know, either, yeah, you know, it seems like, yeah, it was, well, she was being very negative in the way she was answering the phone calls, and I know there was a lot of, I mean, this guy, this dentist that I took over, he was a king. I mean, he was a great guy, very nice guy, healthy, good looking. I mean, you name it, he had everything going for him. And then this dude comes with the beard and, you know, like half a ear gone, and yeah, it was honestly, it was a big transition. And the staff, well, he was also generous. He had medical benefits. I mean, 401k, you name it. I mean, he was paying 2 weeks of vacation, 2 weeks of sick leave. Yeah, 2 weeks of sick leave or something like that. It was I mean, all the benefits you can think of, this guy was paying. He was just generous, but he was also close to retirement, so he didn't care as much. I mean, he was also coming from a very wealthy family. So now I'm second day I had to let her go. Third day, one of the assistant, she decided to quit because they were friends or something happened. So now I have one assistant, and she's good at the front desk. That's another mistake I did. She really wanted to be at the front desk, and she didn't know how to run the front office. So I put her there. Anyway, that's another story that it costed me a lot of money and headache trying to. She wasn't collecting. Our collection went down to 70%, 65% first couple of months. But she was a key person in the practice. I really wanted her to be happy, and so that's why. And then 2-3 months later, she got frustrated with the whole process, and she gave her notice. So we had to fire one went, two of them left the practice, and then. But the practice, the numbers actually we grew. I mean, while all of this was happening, I would say probably 25 to 30% growth. We are almost close to doing $1 million, hopefully by the end of the year. So I mean, it worked out great. What I realized was I don't think people are. If you have the dentist that's supporting you, I mean, he was really supporting me. He still comes to the practice. I did a crown on him. I did a filling on him. His whole family comes in. His mom still comes to the practice. I mean, we have really. He's just a great guy, and he has been very supportive of the transition. If you're in that kind of position, and I don't think the staff matters as much. Most people, they're loyal to the location and that phone number and all that, and not to the staff, I should say. So yeah, I had a lot of staff turnover, unfortunately. But
Sayar, can you tell me about staffing at your startup? Because for me, in the beginning, staffing a startup was a challenge. Right now, things have kind of evened out, and I'm somewhere that I like. But in the beginning, it was tough. What was staffing like at the beginning of your startup? How did you find people?
I think it was actually very difficult to find the right staff. For me, fortunately, I had one of my assistants from another practice follow me, and I think that's all I needed to start out, because we weren't as busy. The first month it was terrible. We barely had any new patients, but fortunately we grew really rapidly, and I think it had to do with the way we advertise. Well, with the way we focused on certain things to distinguish our practice from other dentists. So our first priority was, we entered a very competitive city. It was my hometown. I was like, okay, I know this town. My family's been here for 18 years. Let's do it here. I think in hindsight, it might have been a mistake because it's a very competitive area. But then quickly we figured out how do we distinguish ourselves. So our hours are crazy. I open from, I think when we started, I was open from 8 to 7 every day, and then 8 to 3 on Saturdays. So that was one way we distinguished ourselves.
When you were open with those long hours, did you have a lot of downtime during the day? Or was it full?
Not the second month. We've been getting 100 new patients a month. That's a lot for a startup. I think that's been keeping us busy. And the second thing was how do we distinguish ourselves through other means? And one way was I knew the city didn't have any specialists, and I wanted to focus on a specialty procedures. And so I actually was a startup that purchased a cone beam CT scan right away before I opened my practice. I knew that there was a need for it, and so we do everything in house. A patient walks in, we provide really general dentistry. We provide root canals, implants, and a lot of other procedures that I knew a lot of other practices didn't offer to the patients, staffing wise. So I'm going to come back to that. So staffing wise, I had one assistant. I had another patient walk in, or another staff member walk in as we were doing construction, and I really liked where her thoughts were and how social she was, and so I hired her right there, and so I gave her a chance. And she's one of the best staff members that I have. So she's a front desk and an assistant. But I think her strong point is, so what we started her out with, what we really needed was with the front desk, and slowly transitioned her to the back and to become an assistant. So I have two assistants. I also had some other. I still do have some staff members that I'm not 100% happy about, so I've got to make some difficult decisions very soon, because I am still looking for that rock star dental assistant to be able to support me as we become busier and busier. And so I don't know, like we posted ads in Indeed, and we got like hundreds of different applications. And as a startup, you don't have that much time to go through hundreds of different resumes, and 99% of them are really not eligible to become an employee there, So that was like, I didn't even go through half the resumes. I just stopped. It wasn't possible. We posted on Facebook. We had some luck there. But we are still sort of struggling with the staff members. Although I think through Facebook, I really found a really, really nice insurance coordinator who's awesome at what she does. And sometimes she was an assistant, so she did front desk stuff, she did insurance, and she was an assistant. So I still have her involved in all three of those aspects. But her main point is, or her main duties are insurance coordinator. And so at the beginning, it was my brother and I, and we were technicians. We were doing, each of us had like 5-6 different titles. We were front desk, we were everything, and we slowly passed on those titles to specific staff members after we recognized their strengths and weaknesses. So it's still in the works because we are so young as a practice, but we have sort of stabilized. And going forward, we plan to make some changes, but it's finally calmed down, and we can actually sit back and reevaluate everything. And so it was very challenging. I think as staff members overall, it was pretty challenging for me.
I got it. I got something to say about that too. I think that as you hire for personality, it almost always turns out better. You can hire people with skills, but you can't train personality. So yeah, we hired somebody who wasn't an assistant before, and she's been great.
Nice. I got a question.
Sorry, I just have to say that's a great point. If they don't have, you cannot train personality. I really tried, like 5 different times. I trained them, everything. It didn't work. You can't train personality. If they have a terrible personality, if they can't talk with you, don't think, oh, they're just nervous. No, don't hire them because you're going to regret it.
So real quick now, I'm sure with the all the incentives that were there and the employees, I'm sure a bonus system wasn't possible. But anyway, if you do, or if any of y'all are doing bonus systems, are you, and then what are you doing for those bonus systems for the staff?
I don't believe in bonus system. They're already getting paid good amount, and as long as yeah, because it's a temporary motivation, I believe. And it's like it gets them excited for the first month, maybe 2 months, and then after that, it's just they're looking for the next bonus. And if you don't give them, you get all these.
They're gonna come to expect it.
Yeah, they're going to expect it, and there are times you will not be able to do it, and those are the times that they will start having attitudes and all these other kind of issues. So I'm more into like paying good, but then have a clear goals and that, or I should say, a clear job description for them. These are the things that you need to do, and that's part of their job. If they're not doing those things, I mean, it's just not. Then it's not a good fit for your practice.
I do give bonuses.
Sure.
So most of my bonuses are not according to a precise system, but one of them is. So a big thing with the startup is phone coverage. You always want to have your phones answered, especially because most startups are not open, all throughout the week. Many startups, the doctor will be working somewhere else a day a week, 2 days a week, and then at their office the other days. But I always wanted my phones answered. All through, like 24/7 basically. So I have a system with my front desk secretary where during off hours, if a call comes in, that call gets forwarded to both my cell phone and her cell phone. If she answers that call, she gets a bonus. If she answers it and schedules a new patient, she gets a bigger bonus. So that's an incentive to her. It's something that's entirely optional. So if she's out grocery shopping and a call comes through and she doesn't want to take it, she doesn't have to. She's out grocery shopping and a call comes through and she wants to take it, she can. She'll talk to them. She'll make some money. Besides that, I do give bonuses for example, if I notice that my assistant just went out of her way to do something above and beyond that was really, really nice for a patient. Like a patient was really nervous and she did something just above and beyond. Then in the next paycheck, I might write like a short note like, thanks for being so nice to our patients. I want you to know I appreciate it. Here's a $150 bonus. I'll do things like that. But I don't have like if we meet this goal of production, then we split it and everybody gets 5%. Like I don't do that right now.
Gotcha.
I do bonuses. We actually started this month. So I know we are a young practice. We started this. I had training through Scheduling Institute when I was an associate. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's and I think it can serve, do it right. It can serve as a good motivator. And so for me, it's if we reach a certain goal in collection, then everybody gets bonuses. But I think I am going to modify it slightly where if it has to be performance based as well, because not everybody really deserves a bonus. And some people go above and beyond their job titles to earn it. And so I think I'm going to make it performance based, but we're going to modify it as we go and see. This is our first month that we implemented bonuses. So I don't know if you're going to reach it. Hopefully they will reach it. But it's based on collections. And the way why we made it, because we are a growing practice. We are supposed to be growing. And so based on the numbers that we evaluated for the past 3 or 4 months, it made sense. So we decided to implement it.
Nice. Lance, how about for you?
So currently, this kind of goes into checking what your staff's policy already is before you buy the practice. There were some things factored into their bonus system already. It's not tied to any sort of production, and that's something that I'm going to change here in the coming weeks and months, because I think the production-based bonus system is probably the most fair if you're going to do a bonus system at all. My staff are paid well, and they have a basically like a bonus at the end of the year that they've always been given, which is about $2,000 for each staff member, and that's for covering medical or retirement and everything else that they would have otherwise had. But he once had a bonus. He once had a health plan and retirement, and said the staff didn't respect it. They kept asking for raises, and finally he just had a meeting with them and said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Setting up those programs is a lot
I'm going
of
to give you a bonus
work to begin with.
What?
Setting up those programs like health plans and retirement plans is a lot of managerial work to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're not responding well to it, I do understand why he'd just say, hey, here's some extra cash, do what you want with it.
Yeah, I would rather give them the extra cash, and I think they would probably rather have the extra cash rather than have a health plan that maybe is double coverage with whatever their husband has or any other thing. I'd rather just give them the cash to go do with what they want. If you're going to do it at all. I don't know that it's necessary. I think complimentary words and a good office environment goes a lot more towards job satisfaction than even any bonuses, as long as staff are paid reasonably.
Gotcha.
I want to make a comment regarding that staff bonus. I really thought you meant like as far as production bonuses. I truly believe that you really need to take care of your staff. Your staff is so important. It's part of your team, and that's your staff. It either make your life easier or it will make your life a hell. So, if you have the right staff, you take care of them. I take care of my staff. We're going to the baseball game. We're doing barbecues. They get end of the year Christmas bonus. They get like surprise massages, petty and meddy, stuff like that. Because they really appreciate that, and it's also that surprise factor that comes into play. So I really believe into taking care of your staff. It's just I do not believe into as far as production, quotas. But then I'm just and the older doctor he didn't have any bonuses either. The last year we did give them Christmas bonuses, but yeah.
I think if you pay your staff more, you tend to attract more better staff members, and ultimately they're going to make your life easier.
Right.
So we pay them really well, and we offer them more incentives here and there, and go. I think the bonus is just a cherry on top, but ultimately you've got to respect them. They respect you. You've got to respect them. You've got to treat them well. And I would pay somebody. If I find somebody really good, I'm willing to pay them extra and steal them from another doctor. Okay.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you've got to be brutal, and for me, I provide a very positive environment, and I expect all the staff members to do that as well. And when they don't, it's just it bugs me. And so I'm generally a very happy person, and that's one reason I think we are attracting a lot of patients, and we are not sort of stealing any patients from surrounding offices. I wanted to point that out. I think 40% of our patients haven't seen a dentist in more than 5 to 10 years. And so we are attracting a lot of patients that haven't been to a dentist. And I think because we treat their patients really well, our staff members know that, we know that, and we provide a pain-free, anxiety-free, or try to at least, anxiety-free environment. And so, and I expect the same thing from my staff members, and they know that.
Nice. I want to know how you track to that number. 40% of your.
We ask. That's the
impressive.
first thing. It's every single patient that walks in. That's actually the second question that we ask them. How long has it been since you've been to a dentist? And we write it down in our. We have a little sheet, and the assistants actually write that down for me before I walk into the office.
Cool. Real quick, I know this is kind of backtracking. I'm curious. I know, D'Angelo, you bought your location, real estate. How about everybody else? Are y'all buying? Y'all bought it, renting? What's the deal there?
Rent.
Yeah. I bought
Lance,
mine. What about you guys?
I bought it, and I wouldn't do it any other way. I will not ever rent.
So is your location a standalone, or is it a unit that you bought, like in a strip?
For me, it's a standalone location on one of the busiest highways in Delaware.
Nice. What about you
For
guys?
me, I bought the building, but I had no option. If I had the option, again, I probably would not buy it. But that's just me.
Yeah, so here's my thinking on it. So I bought the practice. If I would buy the building, it would have added another $300,000 of debt. The building's in a place where it really couldn't be used as anything besides a dental office, and I made sure that in my contract I had first right of refusal. So
he can't sell it to someone else without you turning it down first.
Exactly.
And for anybody who's listening, that's super important what Lance is talking about, because my practice has a little bit of an interesting story that Lance knows in regards to the real estate.
Yeah.
So my office, although I built it out from scratch, the whole place was gutted. It'd been basically an abandoned space for a good year and a half. Before that year and a half, it was a dental office. It was a 2-op dental office, two dentists practiced out of there. And it'd been a dental office for about 30 years. But those dentists did not own that space. A new owner came to own the building. He decided he didn't want them in there, and he told them they had 1 week to get out. So this place was a dental office for 30 years. The new guy came in, bought it, said, you guys have 1 week to get out. Your contract was with the previous owner. It's not with me. So he kicked them out. He tried to do something else kind of interesting with the building. It didn't work out for him, so then he just wanted to unload it, and I ended up acquiring it. Those dentists, like I said, they had 1 week to get out, and they didn't want to lose their whole patient base, so they kind of just went into a really less than ideal location that was not visible at all, terrible old rundown building, but they didn't have long to figure it all out. Of those 2 dentists, one of them retired a month ago because I guess he just didn't think it was worth it because they weren't doing very well anymore. And the other one is still in there kind of trying to make it work. So be careful that you have a good contract, like Lance said, first right of refusal, because you don't want to get kicked out of your building if it's not yours.
And I had actually a friend of mine open a gym in the next town over, and he wasn't careful with his contract. They invested, I think, $200,000-$300,000 remodeling this place, and the owner basically kicked him out. And they were out, I don't know, $200,000-$300,000. And I thought to myself, we're going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars redoing this whole place, because the building, it had been so many different businesses before, and it was vacant for a while, and it just made sense, because I did actually try to rent, and ultimately my mortgage would have been less than what it would cost me to rent from a nearby location that I really wanted.
Yeah.
And so it just made sense for me to do it, and invest in purchasing the property, and plus I saved money with my mortgage being less than the rent.
here's something else to consider too. When you're getting into buying a practice, if that's the only one you want to buy, yes, absolutely, like buy the building. I think that's a great idea. If you're looking at starting multiple practices, or you're going to be buying multiple practices, I would caution you that there's a certain point at which the banks are going to say,
You've got
I don't want to loan this guy money anymore. Yeah. And so
I think that number is like 2 million. Once you get around 2 million in debt, even if everything's going well, they kind of cut you off.
Well, I'll tell you right now, we had a hard time even getting a house loan
Wow.
after buying the practice, and they're like, well, you're a new business owner. You haven't established a track record. But I'm like, I bought a 40-year-old practice. Like,
That is the
that's
track
not
record.
track record.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, and so I went to like 5 different banks trying to get a home mortgage, and finally, like, my buddy who's a banker that I golf with was able to get me a home mortgage. So the struggle's real out there to get financing, and so just be mindful that as you're coming out of school with your large student loans, and then as you're buying a practice, that adds up quickly. And like Rob said, you got to make sure you have your cash flow that's going to service that. I think it's a really important thing, is to make sure that cash flow is there.
Regarding the bank, it's actually a very good point. Sorry to interrupt you, Rob, but I think D'Angelo knows my situation that I went through. I'm not gonna name banks because
Go ahead.
they're all pretty pissed off with me. But be really careful for anybody who's opening or buying a practice. Get somebody else's advice on that contract, because I agreed to pay. I was duped into paying 12% interest rate during what they termed project phase, and that almost like it almost cost me tens of thousands of dollars.
Whoa, repeat that one more time.
I'm not going to name the bank, but they will say it's a normal thing for them to
Can I name the bank?
12% interest rate while you're building your practice.
Okay.
And it's
While
probably
you're
number
building your
one bank.
practice, it's called project phase.
It's called project phase while you're building the practice. And they said, oh, it's only going to be like 2 months, 3 months maximum. And I was okay with that. I was like, okay, that's not going to be much. And they said they were going to push the major, all the major disbursement amounts towards the end of the loan period. So it wasn't going to be much at all. But there isn't anything guaranteed that they in writing that says, oh, it's not going to take long. And I saw that they were taking months and months after I had opened. I was still under so-called project phase.
You're working and seeing patients, and the practice is open, and they're still saying it's project phase.
I'd been open for three months, and I was still in project phase.
Now, is that something you can get in writing? Like when you're signing the loan documents that you go to, or
no,
is there somewhere you can?
The best thing is don't accept 12% interest rate. Don't do it. Don't do it. And there are ways around it. Don't listen to them. So you live and you learn. But ultimately, they really did help me out. I was able to reverse it.
Everything is negotiable.
Everything
is negotiable. Everything is possible. Everything is negotiable. And don't just settle for, oh, that sounds great. Ask for people that have done it before. I didn't have any, I think Practice Biopsy is a great tool for people to look through. As I was opening my practice, I was asking a lot of questions from D'Angelo. I was looking through some of the things he was doing, some of his recommendations, and I was reading all the comments that Rob was making and Lance was making, and I think it's a great tool, and it's sometimes underappreciated. But for any new owner, go through what's already been discussed in a lot of the videos and comments, and you're going to learn a lot about that. So when you're opening, the bank, and be careful what's in there.
I want to add on to something about these banks. So For anyone going through this process, you have to work with more than one bank. Even if you think, oh, this bank is going to be great, they said yes, it's going to be awesome. Always be talking to multiple banks up until like the end where you can't talk to any other ones. I was working with a particular bank in the beginning. Everything was good. I was happy with the amount they wanted up front. I was happy with the interest rate. I was happy with everything, all the terms. Okay, I wasn't even talking to any other banks. Okay. With my arrangement, I was able to have my build out started before I paid the contractor. So I hadn't paid him anything. I hadn't actually taken out the loan, but he just saw the paperwork. He's like, okay, looks good. I'll start building. So we're like halfway done with the construction. And then the bank goes, okay, actually, you know how we didn't want any money down? Actually, now we want 20% down. Actually, now we want to put a lien on the practice and we want to put a lien on your personal residence. Actually, you know how we said the interest rate was this much? Actually, we're going to make it this much. We made a mistake last time. So I was like, I can't do it. Like, that's not even doable for me. So they tried to bully me into that deal, and I didn't. I said, you know what? It's not going to happen. So I dropped them. My practice is halfway built. I have no financing now. My practice is halfway built. I don't know how I'm going to pay anybody. So I have to, I'm literally just walking bank to bank to bank, calling banks, and trying to get financing again. And I did. But I had more banks in the beginning, then I wouldn't have had to do that. I would have been like, all right, bank A, sorry, that's what you're trying to pull? Fine. I've got bank B ready to go. But my situation was tough to begin with because I was doing this as a dental student, no work experience. So it was really tough, but it ended up working out fine.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Tell them how you leveraged one bank's offer against another. I mean, that was probably what saved your butt.
Refresh my memory, Lance. I definitely took the offer. I took the offer that I had from that bank and I took it to the other bank and it was like, hey, I need you to beat this. And originally it was a bank that every bank except one turned me down because I was a dental student. But once I had the approval from that one, you can show that approval to other banks and be like, hey, I'm already approved by this bank. What can you do? And then they'll take you more seriously because they're like, oh, this bank's done their due diligence. This is someone who we should consider. And then once you have that, you can go to bank number 3 and be like, hey, 2 banks already approved me. Like, do you guys want my business? Like, what can we work out? So once you have one, use that as leverage to go to other banks. Don't just stick with the one. The first one you get is probably going to be the worst.
You can go back to the other banks that already turned you down.
Yeah, the first one that you get is probably going to be the worst terms. They're probably going to tell you 12% interest. And you can even go back to a bank that turned you down once you've been approved somewhere else, and then they can reconsider. Definitely.
Really quick, on the building. Building financing is getting it is hard. So that's number one. They usually require 20% down on the building. Okay, so if you don't have that 20% down, especially getting out of dental school, I didn't have 20% down. So I got lucky that the seller doctor he carried over the 20%. So you always have that option. But even combining the building with the dental practice, it makes it 5 times at least, in my opinion, more harder to get financing than just trying to get the dental practice. A dental practice with a good lease, it's just right. It's just as good, or in my opinion, because your debt to income ratio doesn't increase like Plan said. Because if you have future plans to leverage things, you will not be able to, because you're buying this asset, even though it's an asset, but it's not producing income. Or you're not leveraging it in a way that makes sense.
It doesn't give you. It's an asset that doesn't give you any cash flow. It's not liquid.
Yeah,
and
so
there's
basically,
no cash
it's just
flow.
like, it's just sitting there. You're using it. Anyway, going back to the banker. Bankers are another people, in my opinion, not to trust. I went through the same process. There's this banker that she took me to lunch. We went through all these processes. I thought she really going to get me the loan. She didn't apply to multiple banks, and later on she came back and said she's not going to do the loan. So that set me the practice, buying the practice at least a month and a half in the process. Now the seller is getting really frustrated too. He's about to call off because I cannot get my financing together. So it was a huge debt. to go through the process. But bankers like D'Angelo and all of you said, you got to work with multiple bankers. The other thing I found out, local banks are great. Local banks, if you could get a hold of a local banker that could help you, they will fund the whole thing. I went once I found a local banker. I mean, the whole process literally took 2.5 weeks to get it approved and get going, because they're the guys that makes the call. They don't have a big corporation. They have to call in and go through all these process. If they said they are going to fund it, they are going to fund it. But again, I mean that's what my experience was. So yes, getting multiple banks involved is so important.
I absolutely agree with you, Saurabh. Local banks are the way to go. My property, my building was financed by a local bank, and I could not be happier, because you have a person that you can go talk to, you can go and discuss things, and they even offered me a practice loan. And at the time, I thought it wouldn't be enough, but in hindsight, it would have been more than enough,
Right.
because D'Angelo and I took a very unconventional way of building our practices. We stayed very lean, and I built a beautiful facility, but for probably half the cost of what it would have cost me to go with a so-called dental contractor. That's the biggest scam out there. They call themselves dental contractor and charge you 50% more in all the costs. So that's one thing. I do want to emphasize, local banks are awesome. I could not. My property was purchased through a local bank, and I should have done financing with them as well. And they are a great point. I think since we are talking about contractors, I might as well bring that up, because both D'Angelo and I, we didn't go with the so-called dental contractors.
Nope.
And we saved a ton of money. Fortunately for me, I had my brother who oversaw the project, and he was basically the secondary backup contractor out there on the job site, making sure everything was all right, making sure all the decisions were made the way we wanted them, and so if you're building a new practice, it's so important for you to get people in dental contractors involved, but ultimately get somebody who's a local contractor who has experience, and who can hire subcontractors that can do your plumbing and electric. Plumbing and electric are the two most important aspects of a dental practice. And the general contractor that you hire, they're gonna hire the same subcontractors that the dental contractor is gonna hire. So just make sure that the plumbing company and the electric company have done dental practices before, and if they have, you're going to save 50% on your cost.
And with
we were getting ridiculous.
None of the contractors or subcontractors had done dental before, but I knew there were certain pieces of basic equipment that I was going to be getting from a local dental supply vendor. I used Midway Dental for a lot of my stuff, and to get my compressor and my vacuum. So all I did was say, hey, Midway, you know that compressor and vacuum that I'm going to buy from you? What type of plumbing tube does it need? This kind. Hey, contractor, they said put this kind in. Okay, we got it. That was it. Okay, I don't need to pay like extra premium for that, even there's so many upcharges in the construction and the build out process if you guys are thinking about startups, like even down to getting a dental design, like for a set of design plans for a dental office. Some places will charge you like $30,000 for a design. All right, I designed my own. I sat with my contractor and it's like, hey, I need to fit 4 rooms about this size for my patient chair. I need a bathroom here, a waiting room, and like a secretary area. Let's draw that on a piece of paper. I went over to the guy's house for dinner. We had a piece of paper. I think Lance was there.
It was delicious.
It was delicious. And we said, all right, let's put some rooms here. No, that doesn't fit. Let's move it around here. We designed the whole office over dinner in like one night, and it didn't cost anything. It didn't cost anything because he's already getting paid because he's building it. I just had to tell him what to build. There you go. Just saved myself 20 grand in one dinner.
For me, I bid it out to, I was looking, I looked at for design firms and bid it out, and actually asked a lot of design firms to give me bids on the practice. Basically gave them the square footage of my practice and told them, hey, I want to design, how much would it cost me? So I wanted something that I could send to different contractors so they could give me accurate numbers on their bids. So I wanted all the electric lines in place, all the plumbing lines in place, and basically making the final decisions on a lot of those things so that there could be as few modifications as possible during the project, because those are what's going to cost you tremendously during your construction. So we wanted to finalize as many things as possible. So we ended up actually, I spent $10,000 or $12,000 on designing designing and engineering plans. So we got both the design and engineering plans, and that way we could actually take all those blueprints and the plans to different contractors and have them bid it, rather than some dental contractor or some random contractor saying, okay, I'll build your office for this much, and then midway through it, they're going to have so many upcharges. So we wanted to prevent that. And so I think we saved a lot of money, even though I paid $10,000 to $12,000 in all the preliminary plans.
Which isn't a bad number. Like 10 to 12 is very reasonable for that.
Can I ask a question to you guys?
Yep.
So what were your startup costs all in? D'Angelo, I kind of know yours,
Yeah.
but not everybody does.
I paid, so my all of my startup costs, including paying all of the professionals' fees, all of the marketing, all of the signage, all the equipment, all the supplies, everything all together was about $85,000. Okay, that does not include my purchase of the building. I purchased the building, the real estate, for $200,000. What were my build-out costs? I technically didn't have any build-out costs because of my agreement with the owner, which Lance, you kind of know my deal with him. Basically, my deal with him was, let's see the value of the building. The building was appraised to be worth $200. Okay, so I said, okay, I'll give you $200, and then you do the build-out for free. And then the owner was a contractor, so he got to learn how to build dental and medical offices, which was valuable to him. So I said, okay, I'll give you the $200 the building is worth, and then you do the build out. And then he did. So I didn't have any increased costs for building out the space. I just paid for the actual land, which is a pretty good spot. It's right in the center of downtown on Main Street. So building, $200. Everything else for the practice, like I have two separate loans. I have a real estate loan, which is $200, and then I have a practice loan. My practice loan comes out to about $85,000. Beyond that, I did take out a little bit more just to have some working capital just in case, but I never had to use it. I never had to use $1 of the extra money I took out because I was generating enough from the beginning from my first month in practice.
We'll have to.
For me, it was, I think roughly speaking, I spent for construction, just construction. I have to emphasize, my practice is pretty high end. I've used, when a patient walks in, I've attracted new patients just by the look of my practice. Yeah. It's very high end. Mm-hmm. And I think we spent around $250,000 building it.
How much again? Sorry.
How many square foot?
It's 2,600 square feet.
26.
I want to just interject really quickly.
So,
I want to interject.
So about 100 per square foot.
Really quickly.
That's right, and two different floors.
So the space that I bought, I was originally going to rent a space, same street, just down the block on the same street. I was going to rent it, and I was going to build it out the traditional way, like paying to have someone build it out. That place was super small. My place now is 1,500 square feet. I have 4 ops. The place I was originally going to go on the same street was 900 square feet. I was going to put in 3 ops. And when I got bids for the build out, to build out that 900 square feet was $155,000 on average.
Okay.
So,
Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it's been cutting out on me, so I'm...
Sorry, I spent So I spent around I think my building cost was $350,000, and my cost to build, to basically rebuild everything was around $250,000 to basically do the construction on a 2-story building, a standalone building.
That's not so bad.
Not bad.
But
Yeah, not
it
bad at
basically
all.
gutted the whole thing and rebuilt everything. And the reason the costs were so high for me is because we didn't have a basement or anything to run plumbing through. So we had to basically cut concrete.
Yeah, a
Cut all the
basement. A
concrete
basement is going to save you
that
money.
costs you a lot. That's
Yeah.
right. So if you're looking to buy a practice or even lease a new area that you want to build your practice in, if they have anywhere where they have a basement, it will cut your cost by so much money because the plumbers and the electricians and everybody else can run their lines in the basement and build your practice. For me, they had to cut, I don't know, 8 inches of concrete in the entire practice to make that happen.
So, D'Angelo, it's funny, I asked you that because the practice that I'm looking at acquiring right now, he's a guy who's about to retire. He's
Okay.
77.
Sounds good.
And he has basically 2 operatories, two practices within a 3-practice building that he's selling for.
He has 2 practices in one building.
Yeah, so there's 3 different wings to the building,
Okay.
and 2 of the wings worth of equipment are for sale. But he only practices out of 1 wing, and his patient base is down to like 600 people. So he doesn't make a ton on it, so it'd end up basically being like a startup
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can
With-
remodel a space
with less
for pretty
ideal
cheap.
location than yours. But man, for that price, I feel like, man, if you get 3 people in the door a day, you're pretty
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah. I mean, you know my philosophy on like staying lean with startup costs, especially. I mean, my op chairs were
I'll be calling you
$500.
more.
Huh?
Then I'll be calling you more later.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually wanted to, I found a great deal on used equipment and I wanted to implement those into the practice. But my brother is a business guy, and so he always, I guess, he takes a different perspective. And all the used equipment that I had bought, I had like a compressor, a vacuum, some chairs. I was like, oh, I'm going to reupholster them and put them in. He's like, nope, no, you're not. That's not the image that we are going with. And he was right, because we spend a ton of money in everything in the practice. It's a very modern practice. You got a CBCT, you've got for him, he didn't want me to do that. I wanted to do it. But if you can stay lean, that's absolutely possible. That would be great. And D'Angelo, his numbers are like crazy. Like I don't know how he built his practice for so little. But I think at the same time, there are a lot of other avenues that you have to stay lean in. And for me, even though I've spent so much money, I consider my practice a very lean practice. And the numbers that we are producing really rival an existing practice that's been out there for many, many, many years. So it ultimately worked out for us because we knew we had the vision. We knew what sort of people we were going to attract, how we were going to attract them, and we knew what was going to set us or distinguish us from the surrounding practices. And so through that, I think we've succeeded. But in any way you can, stay lean. You do not want to spend too much money. You do not want to be overburdened. For me personally, I would like to. We're already starting to look at another practice to either acquire or to build. So even though it's been 4 months, we're already looking into either buying or building a new practice. And so my goal was a year after I acquired my practice or opened my practice, I would open another one. And so it's been 5 months, so I need to start looking. And we are kind of already looking at certain demographics and which city we are going to move.
Mm-hmm. Quick comment on finishing of a place. I think it always goes back to your demographic. You got to really look into your demographic and the patient that you will be serving. I mean, if it's a Medicaid-driven practice, I mean, you can probably not finish it as much, right? But if you're doing a lot of implants, cosmetic dentistry, anything like that, or they're middle to high earners, yeah, it needs to be high, really nice. I mean, D'Angelo is more familiar with the area, so like Birmingham, for example, in Michigan. I mean, that place is a really high-end area. I mean, if you try to cut corners and save here and there, it's just I don't think you will attract that kind of patient base that will pay you huge sums of money for the treatment plan. So it always goes back, in my opinion, goes back to your finish up, goes back to your demographic that you're serving, and the kind of practice that you represent or you want to stand for. So that's just my comment on that. Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was in dental school, one of the things I did to prepare for understanding dental business was interview a lot of dentists that were practice owners, and I interviewed people on all different types of demographics and all different areas. And I've seen really lean offices, and I've seen offices that, you know, they spent $2 million to open and build, you know.
Yeah.
So it totally depends on what you're going for.
Yeah.
You know, but I felt like for me, I had to go lean. I had to go as affordable as possible. Because, I mean, he practiced for a couple years first before he started his practice. I didn't, you know. I'm in dental school saying, all right, I don't want to work for anybody. I'm in dental school. Let's put this together. And I was able to find a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. That's absolutely, it's really crazy how you did that. And it's awesome that you did it. But me, I practiced 3 years out of school. And I sort of had to because if I wanted to come back to Delaware, you actually have to practice a certain number of years outside of the state in order to even be eligible to take their exams for licensure. So this is not a normal state to practice in.
So, would you guys all say that being an owner has at least financially paid off much better than any associate gig you've had?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But again,
you know, there are some people who would make less money as owners. You know, none of us did, but some do. You know, some would make more as an associate.
Say that again.
I said all of us have made more money as owners. Go ahead, Saurabh. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that you know, you know, some people, they go and buy themselves a job. You know, they make money, but they could be making the same amount of money as being an associate. You know, but they always say, "Oh, I'm you know, I have control and all this." I mean, it's all mental game. No, I mean, probably the staff is running the practice, and you're not making. You're making exactly the same or less than other practice. You know, you being an associate, and you paid $500,000 to $1 million for a practice that you basically paid $1 million, for example, let's say $500,000 to buy yourself a job.
The same job you had before.
People do that. I mean, yeah. I mean, probably. I mean, people do it all the time. I mean, like I said, I looked over 150 practices, you know, at least, and I mean, some of them I was like, oh my God, who's gonna buy this? And then the next day, somebody bought it. Like literally, I mean, somebody bought it. You know, I feel so bad for them. I wish there was a way I could just go and give them a hug. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry because you know, you already have you know, probably they have like so much in debt, student loan debt, family. You know, I feel bad, you know, because they're not educated in that department, and they go make millions of dollar decision. They're gonna be, some of them will be there in that practice for 20, 30 years, and they don't even understand what a P&L is. I mean, I have seen many of them. I would say, you know, like, get educated. I mean, learn. I mean, if you're that's gonna be your life in a way. You know, study. I mean, I know dentistry and dental school, they don't teach you, and whatever they teach you is probably you shouldn't learn. as far as business. I mean, if and then you just have to self-learn certain things and look for opportunities, because it's not gonna, nobody's just gonna hand it to you. I kind of lost track.
I do have to say something, if I can. I know we are kind of making it look easy. Hey, look at us, we did it. We are profitable.
You'll make it easy. Make it look easy.
It's not easy. I am personally putting in 16 hours a day. My brother is putting in 16 to 17 hours a day working to try to make the practice successful.
Yeah.
So
before
keep that in mind. It's a lot of, you have to know yourself before going into this. And for me, I was all in, and I knew what it took and what I was able to put in. And so you have to know yourself. It's a lot of hard work. D'Angelo, as you can see, he's putting in a lot of hard work. He's associating, and he's got his practice. I think we are putting in 6 days a week of work, and it's constant. It's not like 8 to 5 job where you go in and you go home. You have so much other things to work in. But for me, I enjoy doing that stuff. And to have my brother by my side, it's a whole different experience, and it's awesome. But it's gonna take a lot of hard work. Yeah. So
for me,
is my screen frozen for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna drop out and come back in.
Okay.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
So for me, I was. It took me about 6 months. Actually, I quit my associate job. I went to this dental practice it was a general practice, general dentistry practice that focused on kids. And so I was associating there, and the owner kept on pushing me to do oral sedation. I was like, I'm not doing this. So I tried, before I even signed up, we never had that discussion that she wants me to do sedation. So it was never the plan. But then after we signed the contract, she was pushing me to do sedation. So I was like, that's it. I literally quit. And as soon as I quit, I was like, I'm done being an associate. I made a promise to myself. Here I'm gonna find a practice that I'm gonna buy and move forward. This is it. So for 6 months, I didn't work. I was just sitting at home analyzing practice. I was looking at the practices that were available. So yes, finding the right practice will take time, but it will be worth it. Overnight, I found this practice and I bought it. Everything is great. So you're absolutely right. It does take hard work and commitment. You gotta you gotta go back to your goals. And my goal was to buy a practice that year, and I was willing to go broke, trying to achieve my goal. And I almost did.
Absolutely, a lot of due diligence and time for me as well. Before we decided to open the practice.
Sarah, what would you say are a lot of the things with a startup that you spend your time after clinical hours doing to grow your business? Like when you're saying 16 hours, the time it's not with patients, what are you doing in those 16 hours?
I think initially it back to staffing. I didn't have the staffing to do a lot of the work that needed to be done. So at the beginning, I had like 5 different job duties that I had to do. You have to check the emails, you have to respond to emails, you have to import all the new charts that you're going to get from different practices, or at least until you train staff members to do that. A lot of front desk duties, figure out, okay, sometimes some of the things that we haven't touched on, I didn't know how to get like merchant services. Who do I go with? What are fair numbers? We interviewed like 6 different merchants to try to figure out a competitive rates for merchant services. That alone took like so much to try to figure out. What else? In networking, IT, it's like there is an endless number of things that come in. I think that's what makes a startup different from an already established practice. I don't know, you guys maybe can correct me, but when you go in, for me, as my first practice, I knew nothing about some of these things. Like you go in and you're like, oh, I want to pay with credit card. We don't accept credit card because it's not in place, you know. And it's just everything. There's too much going on. You have too many responsibilities to try to basically achieve your dream and get your practice to the point where it's self-serving and efficient and running by itself. At the beginning, it's really not a business. It shouldn't be considered a business if it's totally reliant on me or any single person. It becomes a business when you're out of that practice and it's running itself. And so that's the end point for me. In 6 months to 7 months, the end point is if I'm not there, the practice should be running itself without me. And so it's a lot of steps to try to get there. That's what takes the longest. You have to establish policies, you have to establish all sorts of procedures, and it's constantly evolving. I think every practice is very unique, and you run into problems on a daily basis, and you need to be able to modify your existing policies, set up procedures for it to basically run effectively and smoothly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the beginning of a startup, there are no systems. Like, you just
Absolutely.
show up and you have to figure it out. And you have to do a lot of these things right. Like, a big wake-up call to me was one day, probably maybe I was 2 months in, and I'm just working on a patient, drilling a tooth, whatever, and then some guy's walking back to my office with a clipboard, and he's like, yeah, I'm from the state. I'm doing your inspection to make sure all your radiation stuff is proper, all your machines are set right, you have all your proper certifications for your x-ray units. They just show up. And if I didn't have that stuff right, I might have been in trouble, And no one tells
Absolutely.
you, like, okay, no one like comes and says, I hear you want to do a startup. Here are all the things that you need to know so that you don't mess up. Or when this guy with the clipboard comes by and says, how are your x-ray units? No one tells you any of this. Like, you just have to figure it out. You have to, like, piecemeal, find information here, talk to your mentors and hope that you can figure it out. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I ran it.
But don't let that stop you from wanting to start a practice, though.
No, I mean,
the whole point, and I think you guys were saying this, you can't know the end from the beginning, and so it's almost like you have to jump in with both feet and just
do it.
Flail till you're swimming,
I think Howard Farran used to say, do it while you're young and stupid enough to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I agree with that. It's but at the same time, it's a learning opportunity, and it's a opportunity to grow from it. Right now, if any of us were to open another practice, it will probably be so much smoother and easier to do, or even acquire another practice, because the variables that you should be looking at. Initially, when you go in, there's so many things, but ultimately it works out. It somehow works out if you put in the time and the energy, and have the right advice. It's gonna work out. So don't be discouraged.
Right.
Nice. Is there?
Bill, what were some
Anywhere else you want to
other
go?
questions on that list of questions that people submitted to us? Do you have that on?
So the one thing that we hadn't really talked about a whole lot that I had a question on, and one of them is it's just marketing. So
Sure.
What kind of stuff y'all have done to help get new patients and keep those existing patients too, I guess?
Sure. For me, probably 90% of my new patients come from Facebook marketing. Besides Facebook marketing, I've got a newspaper ad that's pretty cheap. It's not super effective, but I get a couple. I at least get a couple new patients a month from my newspaper ad. That's not going to work in many places, but I have a small town. People do read it. But 90% of my new patients come from Facebook. Everybody else just comes from driving by because I am pretty visible. And the way that I track where they come from is on the new patient form, health history. One of the questions is, how did you hear about our office? And they'll write Facebook. But now, that's not a totally complete answer, because you have to keep in mind, they might have first seen me on Facebook, And then on their way home, driving home, they saw my office, and then they were drinking their coffee, and then they saw my newspaper ad. So maybe the one they wrote down was this, but by the time they actually decided to pick up the phone and call, they'd probably been exposed to my brand a couple times. Something that's pretty popular for startups that I don't do is mailers. I will never send out mailers. You have to understand your demographic. I'm sure there's places where it will work, but I'm also sure there's places where sending out mailers won't work. Sending out mailers is very expensive. To do it properly, you will spend tens of thousands of dollars, and
It is super expensive.
it's
I'll
super
second that.
expensive. And I literally would never ever do it. Like, I would almost say I would rather just take that cash and set it on fire and burn it, because then at least I won't hope I'll get new patients. I just know, I'm not gonna do mailers.
I think for
For me.
I think for a startup, you have to know your demographic again. For me, I know I'm in a very small city or town, and word travels really fast around here. And so going in, I knew I was going to provide the highest quality dentistry I could get. And that's one thing, we set our standards really high. We treat everybody, like I tell them, I treat everybody like I would treat my mom or my dad or my family members. And I think that people and patients see that. So the majority of our patients are coming through referrals from their family members, from their friends. And sometimes you just have to ask, when I opened up, I was like, hey, every patient that came in, I would ask them, please refer your friends and family to us, because we are a startup and we need the patients. And so they understand, and the community has been sort of rallied around us, and we've gotten a great response from the people here. So it's a small town. Word travels really fast, and we haven't done really a whole lot of other marketing. Facebook, we are pretty active on Facebook. We plan on doing some investment in mailers, D'Angelo. So my brother is basically he's an entrepreneurship. He was an entrepreneurship major, so he learned a lot about marketing and other avenues, and he's now just had the time to basically start marketing the practice. Until now, we haven't really been able to do a whole lot of marketing because of because of how busy we have been to try to get the practice established and running smoothly.
What about you guys?
But we are still getting $100 a month.
I feel like
We need to increase that.
in a small town, I feel like events, marketing at small town events, sponsoring local initiatives, things like that have done really well for me. Getting my face out there at like the Well Fest they had in the community. We did an open house, and we did mailers for that, and it was super expensive. I don't recommend the expensive mailers, but we did have probably 250 people show up at the open house, which was cool. And I got 3 or 4 new families from that. But outside of that, Facebook marketing, just like you guys, trying to learn from the master D'Angelo over there on how to get my name out there. I'd love to learn from you guys. Getting 100 new patients a month, that's sweet.
It's nice.
The struggle I have is, we're a fee-for-service practice, and so I find that kind of has hampered our growth. But at the same time, I work 4 days a week and see maybe 6 patients a day, and am able to do 850 in production, and I'm hesitant to jump on the growth train just because I'd love
now.
Yeah, I am, and
Absolutely.
I don't want to screw it up by taking insurance. So that's that's something that I'm struggling with right now.
Actually, for me personally, I can share my experience. I worked at 6 different practices in the 3 years that I was out, and that was intentionally. For the first 2 years, I was in the same practice, and in the third year, I was in 6 different. I was in 4 different practices after that, and so or 5 different practices. And the reason I did that was to learn systems, to hone my skills doing different procedures, to work in fee-for-service practices, to work for corporate, to work for insurance-driven practices, and I did all of those. So if I for the first 2 years, I was in a fee-for-service practice, and it's really amazing what you can do with that. So for me, you're seeing 6 patients a day. I'm seeing 16 to 18 patients a day. And so it's backbreaking work. And would I rather be in your shoes? Absolutely. Yeah. So it's, but
Me too.
As a new practice, I don't have the option to do that. Secondly, when you're going with I think we didn't discuss insurances at all. For me, I had to accept a lot of different insurance companies. And some of them in the short months, in the few months that I've already been open, I have already dropped 1 or 2 of them because of how bad they treat you. But when I was signing up, I vetted a lot of the insurance companies and I negotiated the fees with them. So it wasn't like I was going to blindly accept insurance rates. Do not do that. So you have to.
So yeah,
did you have to negotiate?
Did you negotiate with the insurance yourself, or did you hire a firm to do it?
I looked into what's the two. I think it.
I used Unlock.
Yeah, I looked into them. Unlocked the PPO. It didn't make sense to me because I already knew what I was looking for.
Right.
I already knew.
Tell me, I did use a firm, so tell me what the experience is like negotiating yourself. Do you just like call up MetLife and say, "Hey, what do you give me?" and say, "No, that's not good. Give me more." Like, what's your approach?
The only 2 insurance companies that you cannot negotiate with are Delta and MetLife. They will not negotiate.
So give me an example of one you did negotiate with, and just tell me how that went.
I sent them. I looked at I came up with a fee schedule for all the procedures that I was going to do, and I put a lot of emphasis on the procedures that I knew I was going to do. So implants, dentures, restorations, everyday exams, hygiene, things like that. You know, I made sure I had good numbers, and then I would do 80% or 85% of my usual and customary fees and send them, hey, this is what I want. Can you match it? And some of them didn't. Like Dominion didn't want to do that, so I dropped them. I was like, okay, I don't have to go with you. You have to set your standards. You can't just go with every insurance company and be like, okay, I'm going to accept you. Well, come on in because I'm a startup. Do not do that. So for all the other insurance, like who else was I? Cigna, for United Concordia. Actually, I ended up dropping United Concordia because of the way they were treating me and the headaches that they were giving me. So, but all the other insurance companies that we did accept, we negotiated, and some of the insurance policies that are insurance rates that I have are incredible because of the way I negotiated them. And it's some of them are like higher than my usual and customary fees. So it all depends on how you handle it, and you just have to set your standards and be very smart about it. If you don't want to go, it is a lot of headache. So you were saying what are you putting your hours into? That, like negotiating insurance. When we opened up, we were accepting very few insurances. And so I didn't go with anybody to help me with that. But if you don't have the time or energy to negotiate those aspects of your startup, get somebody to help you. So Unlock the PPO is one of them, and there are some other ones. So it's a lot of work. For me, I was an associate. As soon as I started getting close to opening my practice, I dropped all the. I stopped being an associate. I think 3 out of the 5 days, and then as soon as I opened my practice, I think 20 days later, 20 days after I opened, I became full time at my own practice, so I could put all the energy into it, and I stayed busy. I stayed busy right away.
Guys, I need to go. Is there any last anything for me
do
before
we
I?
have any parting questions for Lance about
Last
anything to do with an
one.
acquisition?
Say what?
Any parting questions for Lance before he has to go? Maybe something to do with
Oh,
an
just
acquisition.
yeah. I mean, I was just curious what everybody's BAM number is, man. What's that number every day that you got to hit to
to break
stay
even.
open? Yep.
Oh, a number to break even.
Your daily break-even number.
Too
That
high.
includes everything of overhead,
Too high.
all your
Too high.
bills, your loan bill, payroll, your daily minimum.
Oh,
Pass
dude,
that's yours.
I don't have that number calculated. I don't. I know that overhead in general for us is up in the 60s, more than I want it to be, and I'm working on that right now. We're going through a different supplier, and costs are coming down. Like I'm saving over $500 a month in supply costs. I'll figure that number out, and I'll post it in the comments below.
My number, because I know mine, Lance. My number, to break even for the day, I need to produce 875 roughly. So anything past 875 is so. If I want to take home $1,000, I need to produce 1875 for the day, roughly.
Okay.
And I just calculate that. I look at my monthly expenses and I divide it by how many days I'm open.
Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I told you a number. So I won't. But I'll go look that up and try and figure that out. And then and last plug before I go, if there's anybody who's looking for an associateship or partnership in Colorado, I'm looking for someone. So PM me, and we'll see if we can work out something that we both like. So.
There you go.
All right.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us, Lance.
Yeah. I'll see you guys.
Bye.
Later, brother.
Bye.
For me, numbers, I know a general ballpark of where I should be every month. Because we are in new practice, we are looking for growth. So we are looking for at least 12 to 15% growth every month in terms of numbers. And for me, my main goal right now is new patients, bring in new patients, because I have 6 operatories that I could be practicing out of. I have a hygienist that I started a month ago who's part-time, and so I want her to be busier. So for now, I'm reinvesting a lot of the money that I'm getting back into the practice and towards my loans and things like that. But we have a lot of plans to push do a big marketing plan or marketing push to bring in more new patients, because ultimately I want to have the hygiene department busy, and I want to get I'm practicing out of 4 operatories right now. I need to start the two more operatories that I have empty right now, and that's lost production if they are empty. So that's the goal right now.
Saurabh, question I have. Go ahead, Saurabh.
We can't hear you.
I can't hear you. Saurabh, we can't hear you. His phone's on mute.
No.
We still can't hear you, Saurabh.
Oh, that's because I had it on mute. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. So I was about overhead. Really quick comment. I use a 3-month rolling average for my overhead and my revenue. So I roll up everything and average them out 3 months, and then get a percentage of basically, because in dentistry you have up and down months. This will give you a more a true average, true overhead. 1 month your overhead maybe 60-70%. The other month it's like 40%. So it gives you a true sense of overhead. So for me, my overhead is 56%. That includes my practice loan, and so okay. Did you have a question, D'Angelo? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, I was gonna just kind of change gears a little bit.
Okay.
But because we were talking about production a little bit, so you said that when you acquired that practice, it was producing a certain amount. But then when you took it over, even with all of your turnover of staff, the production has gone up quite a bit since you took over. So what are some of the things that you changed that helped you increase the production so much after you acquired the office?
I would say there was hygiene for sure. I mean, there was this was propane mill in a way. There was about 98% he was just propies and propies. So that was one thing. He would refer out everything, endo, even the simple endo, it was being referred. So just doing that endo and making more hygiene more efficient. Those are, I would say, the two biggest things. And he was even referring a lot of perio. So I was keeping some of those perio back into the practice. So that was that literally had 20-30%, more like 25 to 30% in revenue. And as far as marketing, I did market just sponsors local events and stuff like that. We did open held an open house, which was really success. We got a lot of people show up. Other than that, we do internal referrals incentive where we put a card in each hygiene bag and ask them to refer us. And if a patient shows up and they put a patient refer them, then we send a $25 gift card to them as a thank you. Other than that, not a lot. Right now, my main focus is systems. I'm trying to systemize the practice. Don't believe just people trying to tell you this is the practice you gotta buy. And don't buy potential. A lot of my colleagues, they always call me and text me for advice and feedback. The practice they're looking for. They're always like, they sound so excited because they're buying a potential. I was like, that's potential. Why are you paying for potential? Potential does not exist. You should buy a practice based on current situation. Potential takes money, resources, and time to take to that level. If it was easy, the other dentists probably would have done it. So, it's so important. You gotta look into into those key factors. I got a lot of friends and colleagues reach out to me and they wanted me to do their analysis. The practice. I honestly don't have a lot of time, so what I'm planning to do is do a course, a mini course on practice education. If any of your viewers is interested or audience is interested, they can go to practiceownershipacademy.com and they can just sign up for the email list, and hopefully I will keep them updated. It's coming up. Basically, it will take them through the whole process of finding, locating, financing. I mean, A to Z of practice, finding the right practice.
All right. Any parting words, Sayar?
I just have to say, you don't be scared of opening your own practice. Look into finding the right people and the right resources. I think Practice Biopsy, and there are other dental forums that you can sign up for, and those are invaluable services where you can meet people like Saurabh and D'Angelo and all the other practice owners who will give you advice, and you can learn from their mistakes. So try to do your research and due diligence, and really this is a incredible opportunity for you to to get in charge of your own destiny and your own life, and utilize all the resources that you're provided. I would be interested to learn more from Saurabh, by the way. I would take your course.
Oh, okay, that'd be great.
All right, Phil, go ahead and give us a send-off.
Yeah, man, thank you all so much for letting me be a part of this. Like I said, I'm the least qualified to have participated, but it was a lot of fun. Everyone, D'Angelo, thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely.
And y'all have a great rest of your weekend, okay?
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you, Phil.
Thanks for
It was a
participating,
pleasure.
guys.
No problem.
Easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Zaire, nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.